After Effects has this really nifty feature called the Roto Brush tool. What the Roto Brush tool does is to select an object or a person or an area in a video clip and lift that off of the background, essentially create a separate layer with just that object in it. And this is a moving object, so that it's selecting something that's moving is really cool, and it does it more or less automatically. So to see how it works, just open up Working Files, go to After Effects Projects, and open up 0904 Rotobrush. Now my goal here will be to lift this girl off of the background, to create a new foreground with just the girl and remove her from the background so that later on I can put her back over this background, but I can change the background separately from her. And I can also change her by changing, let's say, the color in the background. I can make it a little darker or something like that. So to select her, I use the Roto Brush tool. And I've included the Roto Brush tool in my collection of paint tools because it more or less works like a paint tool. These are the 3 paint tools there, all of which are paint effects. But the Roto Brush tool is a different effect. It's called the Roto Brush effect, oddly enough. And we're going to work with that one now. So I click on that, and that opens up the brushes panel with brush sizes. It does not open up anything inside the paint panel. It's just the brushes here. And we're going to change the brush size using keyboard shortcuts anyways. So don't really need to work with this panel. So here we are inside the comp panel. We need to work in the layer panel. So to open up the layer panel, I just double click on her, and it opens up her in the layer panel. I've got the Roto Brush selected, and when I hover over her, I get this little bitty green circle. Let me make it larger by holding down the Control key or the Command key and then zoom in a little bit. And now we've got this green circle with a plus in it. The plus means that wherever you drag here, you're going to add that area to the foreground. If I hold down the Alt or the Option key, it turns red and becomes a minus sign. That means anywhere you drag here will be in the background, something that you're not going to try to separate out from the background. And that's actually a way to select something. If you select the background by clicking on the negative side of things, then it'll select whatever's not selected in the background. But we're going to go the sort of normal way and use the selection tool where it's plus. Now to select her is very simple. If people worked with Photoshop and worked with the quick selection tool, they know they have to kind of work their way up to the edges, this kind of stuff, to try to get it to select from inside the object. The Roto Brush tool does that much more automatically. You simply need to draw like a skeleton inside something like this, or someone like this, to then find the edges. It's pretty amazing. Now I'm going to make the brush a little bit too large on purpose because I want it to not exactly select things that well, because I want to fix things after the fact. So my brush is going to be too big. It's going to be bigger than her arm and things like that. But here's how we select something anyways. Just simply draw a line inside the area that you want to select, and then let it go and see what happens. Well, it did pretty well over here, but it just fell apart over here. See how it has purple around there? The purple area is what's in the selection. I want to get rid of that stuff. So I'm going to make the brush a little bit smaller, holding down the Control or the Command key and dragging it in a bit like that. And now I'm going to deselect this area by holding down the Alt key or the Option key on Mac and say, nope, I don't want any of that stuff. And now look at that. It got rid of all of it and almost got up to her arm there. I'm going to do it again. Hold on the Alt or the Option key and get closer to her arm now. Say, just remove all that stuff and see what happens. Much better. Try again. Now we're cooking. A little bit closer there. Very good. Now her arm needs to be added a little bit more, so I'll make the brush a little bit smaller and add that to the selection. Now this is where the fine tuning comes in, because when you do the first one, it's pretty good at finding the edges, but now we're going to nail it down and get a little closer there. Now as far as selecting hair goes, like this, forget it. Can't be done. It's just not going to be that effective. So I'm going to try to remove some of that little extra stuff up there to kind of smooth it out a bit. Too much. I'm going to add that to edit back. Much better. All right, now this area here, we need to deselect this. We don't want to have that stuff showing through. We want it to be deselected. We don't want the background showing there. So hold on the Alt or the Option key again and just kind of draw a line in here and see what happens. Boy, it found almost everything. Look at that. Isn't that cool? I'm going to zoom in a bit here at that one little spot. Control or Command plus to do that. Put down the space bar to get the hand tool, and now I'm going to deselect that area. Make the brush a little smaller. Hold on the Alt or the Option key and just deselect that area there and see how we're doing there to get rid of that. Okay, and add the hair a little bit there. And again, we're not trying to be perfect here because I'm just trying to teach you how to do this, but more or less, I think we have got that pretty well nailed down there. I can kind of drag around here and just take a look, but I see the purple line there's pretty well lined up. We can fix that a little bit here by just fine-tuning it, but I think we got a decent job for our purposes here. Look at that. Okay. So now that we've made this selection, take a look down here below the timeline. I'm going to zoom out on the image too so we can see all of her. You see this little orange dot there, that orange square, and this kind of chevron stuff here pointing to the right and pointing to the left. What happens here is that that little orange dot represents the base frame, this thing that you've carefully worked on. And to the right and to the left of it are 20 frames that Rotobrush calculated would meet the terms of your drawing there. So you can go forward or backward by using the page up or page down key. So we'll go page down to go forward a little bit, one frame at a time. When you do this, just to kind of check Rotobrush's work, to see how things went. And now I know things are going to fall apart when those little bubbles get there on her shoulder. So I'm going to go page up to go back there. You can see the purple line pretty well. I'm going to go zoom in a bit, Control plus, take a look at the shoulders a little more closely here. You can see the orange line or the purple line. I'm going to press page down again. Here, it's pretty good. Page down again. Look at that. The bubbles are not knocking it out of whack, which is not bad, all things considered. A little bit there going on, but for the most part, that's pretty good. You can see little bits and pieces kind of falling apart here in the corner, but other than that, that's pretty good. Let me zoom out a bit by doing Shift /. And I'm looking over here and I'm seeing stuff showing up on her arm. So I need to go back where that messed up. So I'm going to go page up, page up, page up. You can see how the bubble there kind of tore out her sweater there. Page up, and this is where things went bad. So that's where you need to start making your fixes. If you see something going bad going forward, find the first frame where that goes bad and fix it. So I'm going to zoom in on that area, Control plus, Command plus, go over there. And now I'm going to watch this a little more carefully. I'm going to fix that first right there, that little spot. Probably overdid it a bit. There we go. Now I'm going to go down, page down one notch, see if we did repair it now. Oh, now see that coming in there? That bubble's causing it to change. Make the brush a little smaller. And this is where you make your fixes. You make them as they happen. If you make it after the fact, let's say you go a few frames forward and make it after the fact, it won't really repair it going backwards. So you got to always catch it as you're going forward here on the right side of that orange dot. On the left side of the dot, you're going basically back in time. So you need to do it before you go too far back. So you fix it this frame, and then it should fix it down the road as best it can as those guys go through her arm there. So I'm going to zoom back out just to give you the concept that really you can't totally count on this thing getting it right. If I had gone to the beginning here and started selecting her right there before the bubbles came out, probably would have had zero problems. Probably would have worked perfectly. But once the bubbles start coming out, then that sort of messes with the selection here. I want to go check this way now as well. So I'm going to go page up a couple of times and see how that did. Checking the work here. Now right there, we could be fixing this, and I've not been fixing it from the very beginning actually, but I'll fix it now just to kind of pull that in just a little bit there. We could have done that better, but I just wanted to, again, just show you the basic process here. All right. You know, all things considered, we have a few frames here, which is all I want to get at this point. I don't want to do the entire clip because that would take too long. So now we've done this analysis, but we're not done yet. We need to tell After Effects that we like this. We want to freeze these frames. We want to render these frames and save them with the project. And once they're saved with the project, then you don't have to re-propagate them, as it's called. So let me open this up a little bit so you can see the little freeze button there. And I click on that, and that'll freeze these frames. And that takes a while. It has to analyze all the frames. We've only got 1 second basically here, so it won't take too long to freeze the 30 frames or so that we worked on. Okay, good. Now it's created basically this 30 frame clip, more or less. And what we're going to do is we're going to see how this thing now plays over the background. Right now we're looking at the layer panel, so we don't see how it works with the rest of the comp. Switch to the comp, and you can see, we lifted her out of the background. I've got a black solid behind her now. So she is now all that's left of that layer. If I go back to the left before we analyzed it, then you see that's not happening there. Afterwards, I think we got most of it to the end there too. So there you go. We've got all that now analyzed. Now, if you look carefully, you start seeing that place that I was telling you about that wasn't going well, which we could have fixed at the beginning, but for our purposes, that's fine. We'll just live with that. You can see, obviously, that we couldn't get this sort of fringe of the hair there either. Really tough to do that. But that's not a problem for our purposes, because I'm going to put now the original clip behind her. Take the girl's bubble here, the girl bubbles here, put it behind her instead of the black background. And sort of like, what's the purpose of doing this, right? It looks exactly the same as the beginning, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put effects on both of those layers now. I'm going to put an effect on the background layer, essentially. I'm going to go over to Effects. I'm going to give myself a little more room here and go over to Effects and Presets. I'm going to type in Curves. Curves is an effect that allows us to control the brightness and contrast. If you've never worked with curves, don't worry about the fact that it might look a little confusing here. I'm going to talk about curves in the color correction part of the course. So I'm going to bring down this background and make it a little darker. It's very simple to do that in curves. Just pull it like that. Shadow's darker. This makes the highlights darker. The object was to keep her face bright and then bring down the background. So that did that pretty well. Let's go back to her now. And I'm noticing that she has kind of a hard edge. I can go over here to the matte. I can feather it a bit, make it a little bit softer around the edge if I want to, after the fact like this. And if it's a little jagged around the edge, you can smooth it a bit too, like this. That tends to smooth edges a little bit. One way to deal with the matte, as it's called. You can see there it's a little bit obvious that we brought it down because of the edge there as well. So you can maybe feather that just a little bit more. But this is, I brought down the background way, way too much just to show you how to do this. And now we're going to go and add something to her instead of all the subtle changes to the matte. I'm going to add some color to that image to warm up the image a bit. So I'll drag that hue saturation there, and we'll just kind of warm it up just a touch, just so you can see how we can affect two layers at once. And I'm not really happy with that, but again, I'm telling you that I wouldn't normally drop the background that much. I just want to show you that it can be done. Alrighty, I think you've seen how that works. What I want to show you now is how you can apply it to two things at once, just to show you that you can. So I'm going to turn these guys off here and go down to this layer here, changing of the guard. Open that up inside the layer panel. And all I want to do is just show you that you can pick two things. So I'm going to get the old rotor brush tool again here. I kind of want to get those two lime green jackets. I know they're police officers and it's good to have them around and stuff, but I kind of want to tone them down a bit. So I can select that one there, for example, and that one there, for example. Like it's like two things at once, and obviously that went beyond where I want to go, but this is just showing you that it can be done. I can select two things at once, and I would lift them off of the background, and then I could tone down their jackets by changing their color or making it a little bit darker. So that, folks, is how you use the rotor brush to select objects, even if they're moving objects, here inside After Effects.